Yo, what's up guys, it's King Sean here, and in today's video, I will be talking about some trade rumors that Bleacher Report put out yesterday about some guys the Commanders could target in a trade if they become available in a trade. I will be talking about that in today's video, and also I will be talking about a free agent that has been reported by Jeremy Fowler in his recent article about the top 50 free agents this offseason. And I'll be talking about that guy because he linked that player to the Commanders as a guy we could sign in free agency. So that is what I'll be talking about in today's video. But before we do, make sure you guys hit that like button down below, subscribe if you're not already subbed up, and turn on notifications so you never miss a single one of my uploads. And with that out of the way, let's get straight into today's video. Alright, so yesterday Bleacher Report released an article and it talked about some guys that could become available in trade this offseason, and some guys that kind of link to the Commanders, and these are just rumors, right? So not like news or anything like that, but just, some rumors, right? Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, Kyle Pitts, Garrett Wilson, and Deebo Samuel are guys that they named kind of trying to link to the Commanders as guys the Commanders could target if those guys were to become available in a trade this offseason. Now, Myles Garrett, he will not be traded. Andrew Berry confirmed that in his Senior Bowl little media scrum yesterday. The Browns aren't going to trade Myles Garrett, and I knew that. That's just not a realistic option. And, some of the options on here aren't super realistic, but I'm still going to talk about them because I feel like they are more realistic than the Browns trading Myles Garrett. The Browns trading Myles Garrett, that's just not going to happen. So, I'm not going to really talk about him in today's video, but guys that I will talk about are the guys other than Myles Garrett that I mentioned. Let's start with Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has posted up 1,000 yards in the first 3 years of his NFL career. He's one of the best young receivers in the NFL today. He is incredible, and trading for a guy like Garrett Wilson for Jaden Daniels, that would be awesome, right? Like, I would see him and Terry McLaurin as a 1A 1B receiver duo, right? Not a receiver 1, receiver 2, no, because Garrett Wilson is an excellent receiver 1 with New York, right? But I would view him as like the 1B to Terry, man. He is an incredible young receiver. Like I said, one of the best young receivers in the NFL today. And a report came out like a month or two ago that if Aaron Rodgers were to be retained by the Jets, hey man, Garrett Wilson, he could want out. He could demand a trade. Now, how likely will that happen? We'll see. Aaron Rodgers said that I don't think he said this, but I'm pretty sure it was Woody Johnson, Aaron Glenn, or the Jets team president. Not exactly sure, but they said that they would be willing to bring back Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers does have some interest in going back to the Jets, right? So we'll see if it happens. Right now, I don't think they'll bring A-Rod back, but if they do, hey man, watch out, because Garrett Wilson, he could want out. Now, will he want out? I don't know. We'll see. But, hey, man, if he's available for trade, then that's definitely a guy that I would be looking for in a trade, man, because he would be perfect in Cliff's offense, man, and a great weapon for Jaden's disposal for sure. Now, what would you have to trade for him? Probably a first-round pick, maybe a second, but probably a first-round pick, which I have no problem trading because our first-round pick is a late one anyways. It's a 29th pick in the first round, right? So I wouldn't mind trading our first-round pick for Garrett Wilson. But once again, we'll see if Garrett Wilson is made available. Right now, I don't think he will be made available. But if he is, definitely a guy I would for sure go after. Deebo Samuel is another receiver they named. Now, Deebo, I don't really want him. His play definitely, severely, he did not have a good season. I'm just going to say it like that. He did not have a good season. Let me look up his stats here, but if you just watch the 49ers, and the 49ers had plenty of primetime games this year, so I bet you guys watched the Niners at some point this year, but Deebo's play just wasn't great this year. I mean, there were times during the season, during some games, where he kind of looked disgruntled on the sideline when he wasn't getting the ball that much. He was complaining in the locker room to the media about not getting the ball as much. He was even complaining on social media, not getting the ball as much, right, on Twitter. And when he did get the ball, what would he do? He would drop the ball, right? So I remember the Rams game where he had an easy walk-in touchdown and he just completely dropped the ball. And that was, I think, week 12 for the 49ers. Thursday Night Football, I'm pretty sure he just completely dropped the ball. Would have been an easy touchdown. So, like, we can't do that, Deebo. We can't do that and, argue for the ball, right? So, I do not want that type of guy in my locker room, me personally. Obviously, you need some dogs in the locker room. And Deebo, if this was the Deebo from 2 or 3 years ago, back in 2021, he had the best season of his career with over 1,400 yards, 6 touchdowns, and had like 300 yards on the ground with a couple more touchdowns as well, right? So he was amazing in 2021. His other seasons, though, have been pretty mid. And, he suffered some injuries in other seasons. Like in 2022, only played in 13 games. In the past 2 seasons, has played in 15 games each, right? So he's dealt with some injuries, but overall his play has just not been the same ever since that 2021 Pro Bowl season for him, right? Had 51 receptions, 670 yards this past year, only 3 touchdowns. And like I said, if you watch 49ers games, you can see that his play just wasn't as good, right? So, Deebo, he does have the connection to Adam Peters. Obviously, Adam Peters was with the Niners for all those years as their AGM. So, Adam Peters may be interested in him, but me personally, I would not be interested in him because his play just hasn't been as good as it was in 2021, and he may be an issue in the locker room. Like, I don't want him in Jaden's ear all the time for not getting the ball right. Like, I don't want that. So, that's just me, though. Comment down below whether or not you would like Deebo or any of these guys I'm going to talk about in today's video, but that is my stance on Deebo Samuel in a potential trade for him. Now, a guy that they mentioned here, which I saw as pretty interesting, is Kyle Pitts, obviously current tight end for the Falcons. And he's been very underwhelming ever since his rookie year. In his rookie year, he was outstanding, had over 1,000 yards, only had 1 touchdown, but he was awesome in his rookie year. But since then, he's fallen off drastically, man. Like in 2022, he only had about 300 yards, and in the past 2 years, he's only had about 600 yards, right? So his play has fallen off. He had a couple of drop passes this year. His play just wasn't as good. And Falcons fans, man, hey, man, it looks like they're over him, right? Because, drafting a tight end with the 4th overall pick who is supposed to be this generational prospect or generational tight end, right? And his only good season or great season of his career was his rookie season. And ever since then, he just hasn't been great, right? So Falcons fans are very disappointed in him. And he has one more year left on his rookie deal. So, we'll see what they do with him after his rookie year. But they might just decide to trade him this offseason. I mean, they haven't gotten enough for him. Now, will they trade him? I honestly doubt it, right? Kyle Pitts isn't horrible or anything like that. He just has been a disappointment, and especially for a tight end who was the 4th overall pick in the 2021 NFL draft, right? So he's been disappointing in that aspect, but he still isn't a terrible player or anything like that. Would I trade it for him? Probably not, to be honest. Would Jaden and Cliff be able to fix him a little bit or get him going? Probably, right? Like Jaden made Zach Ertz look awesome. Like Zach Ertz was awesome for us this year, and I want us to resign Zach Ertz, right? Ertz had over 650 yards, 7 touchdowns, had a really good game versus Philly in the NFC Championship game. So I'm not saying Pitts and Cliff would be able or would not be able to, fix Pitts a little bit, but I would rather go a different direction with tight end, right? I would rather just bring a tight end in from free agency, or I don't think there's great tight ends in free agency, so I would just bring Ertz back, and then you could draft a tight end as well. Or obviously you have Ben Sinnott sitting behind Zach Ertz right now. I expect him to get more opportunities next year, right? So, we may consider trading for Kyle Pitts if he becomes available, but I doubt he becomes available, and I just think that we're probably going to re-sign Zach Ertz. If not re-sign Zach Ertz, have Ben Sinnott as your starting tight end, and if not that, then you'll probably draft a tight end maybe in the 2nd or 3rd round in this year's draft, right? So we'll see what we do, but I doubt Kyle Pitts is a real trade option this offseason. And then the final guy I want to talk about that this article mentioned is Max Crosby. Max Crosby obviously has been with the Raiders his entire career, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, four-time Pro Bowler. He's been awesome really ever since he got into the league. And look, if I was Max Crosby, I'm demanding a trade. I'm not going to lie. I love Raider Nation, right? But, bro, you're wasting my prime. And how old is Max Crosby? Because I'm pretty sure he's still young. He is 27 years old, right? So he's still on the younger side. He's still in his prime, right? He's still a great player. But, bro, like, the Raiders are wasting my prime. You know, I don't know what they're going to do. They hired Pete Carroll, right? And the likelihood of the Raiders trading Max Crosby is pretty low, to be honest with you. But, you know, if I was Max Crosby, I'm demanding a trade. I'm not going to lie. Like, look, love Raider Nation, but y'all are wasting my prime. I'm trying to be successful, win a ring one day, and y'all probably just aren't going to help me achieve that, right? Like, they literally won 2 games to the Jaguars and what was the other team they won against? I completely forgot, but they literally knocked themselves out of position to select a quarterback at the top of the draft in a quarterback class that is very weak, right? The 2 guys that are projected to be taken in the first round right now is Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders, right? So they aren't going to have an opportunity at either of those guys, right? Because they are at pick 6, and both of those guys are probably going to be taken in the top 4, right? So unless they trade up, they are pretty much cooked in terms of drafting a quarterback in this year's draft class, right? So, you know, they probably aren't going to trade Max Crosby, but man, he would be great here, man. Max Crosby, obviously a great all-around edge rusher, great at, you know, setting the edge. Obviously a phenomenal pass rusher, right? So I would love Max Crosby on this team. He is the exact guy we need on this D-line, this defense, but unfortunately, the likelihood of the Raiders trading for him isn't very likely in my opinion, right? So, you know, we'll see what happens. We'll see if the Raiders decide to make him available, if he possibly demands a trade, but I honestly doubt it happens. So those are all the guys that were mentioned in the article that I wanted to talk about. And then real quick, I want to talk about a guy that we could be targeting this free agency, mentioned in an article by Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. He made an article about the top 50 free agents this offseason, and Osa Odighizuwa, defensive tackle for the Cowboys, was included in that article. So he feels like Osa could be a guy that we target this offseason. Obviously, Cowboys, so he has ties to Dan Quinn, and he had a pretty solid season. He had, let me search it up. I have the number right here, but I know he was 3rd in pressures among all defensive tackles in the 2024 season, according to PFF. He had 60 total pressures, so 60 pressures as a defensive tackle. That is really freaking good. He had 4.5 sacks. He had a 68.1 overall grade from PFF, so that is pretty good. A 78.5 pass rush grade that ranks 11th out of 219 qualifying defensive linemen, so that's really good. However, he's not great at stopping the run, so that's my concern with him, right? Because y'all already know our run defense was horrid this past season, right? 50.8 run defensive grade, right? So that's not good really at all. That's below average according to PFF. So I really want to find a guy that's just good at both, right? Great at stopping the run, but also great at getting to the quarterback, right? And Osa Odighizuwa, he's great at pass rushing, great at getting to the quarterback, great at generating pressure, but is not great in run defense, right? So, you know, I would actually bring him in, though. Like, he has the ties to, you know, Dan Quinn, so the likelihood of us bringing him in is pretty likely since, you know, he has the ties to Dan Quinn, right? How much money will he want? We'll see. If I had to guess, he probably gets maybe like 10 to 12 or 13 million dollars a year, right? So maybe between the 10 and 12 range, maybe a little less than that, maybe a little more than that. We shall see, but he's definitely a guy that I could see us definitely bring in because he's really good at rushing, pass rushing as a defensive tackle, right? Great at generating pressure, and he has obviously the connection with Dan Quinn since obviously DQ's from Dallas, right? Or obviously with Dallas's defensive coordinator for 3 years. You already know, right? So, I could see that signing happening this offseason for sure. And we have a need at D tackle. We definitely do. So that is it for today's video. Hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like down below, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment down below what trade targets that I mentioned you guys would actually pursue in the offseason if they are made available. And other than that, it's been King Sean, and I'm out. Peace.